There's a moment in every physician's life when the story shifts, when the work becomes more than just providing medical care, and something inside begins to stir. Questions rise, meaning evolves, and you're left wondering, who am I behind the white coat? I'm Lisa Catalano, a clinical social worker and well-being coach for physicians, and I'm honored to welcome you to this conversation. This is Unscripted, a physician's journey, candid conversations about the moments that shape and reshape us, stories of calling, crisis, reinvention, and grace. In each episode, you'll meet a physician who has reached a crossroads and found the courage to listen, change, or realign. My hope is that as you listen, you'll feel a little less alone and maybe a little more seen. We're not here for polish, we're here for truth. So pull up a chair, grab a coffee, and let's begin. Today, I'm sitting down with Dr. Mark McGinley, a board-certified pulmonary and critical care specialist who's been practicing medicine for so long that he actually just retired from clinical work last week. Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
He was working as a pulmonologist and intensivist at St. Mary's Regional Medical Center, Grand Junction, Colorado. He received his business degree from the University of Natal, medical degree from the University of Cape Town. Physically, he's currently living in Paris, France, but emotionally and mentally, he shares that he is in a new space. This is uncharted territory. He's curious to see what unfolds as he slows down and allows life to happen. He's interested in writing, improving his French, and beyond that, it's an open canvas. Mark, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Lisa. It's my pleasure.
So Mark, maybe we could just start at the beginning. Do you remember that very first moment, that first pull that made you think you wanted to be a doctor?
Yes. It wasn't one moment, it was a culmination of moments. I was volunteering during a summer job at a local hospital. I was a nurse's aide. I think I was making beds, in bedpans. The team would come in every morning with the urologist. I was on the urology ward, and the matron and urologist, junior doctors would walk around bed to bed. And I would pretend not to be interested, but I was absolutely fascinated. Then one day, Dr. Giles was his name. He said, "Mark, I think you would like to join us. Come join us." And from then on, I was part of the team. And I was a business student at that time. Then the thing that switched is he invited me to the operating room and he asked me to assist with a nephrectomy. And I did that. And afterwards in the changing room, he explained to me that he was an engineer before he did medicine. And I was a business student and I thought I was much too old to change careers. And he sort of gave me permission to dream about medicine. And I burst into the kitchen. I cycled home on the bike and I told my mom and dad, I want to switch. I want to be a doctor. And they calmed me down a little bit and said, well, you've got to finish what you started. And that was a difficult decision to postpone my excitement. But I applied, got accepted, and the rest is sort of the beginning of a medical career. But I'll never forget that experience.
So what would you say, if you could put it into just one phrase or one word, what would you say your why was back then?
That's very difficult for me, but I think it was something to do with humanity, something to do with challenge, something to do with being stretched more than you ever thought you could be, something like that.
Well, that's beautiful. And it sounds like, it's interesting because there's always a moment in time in all of our lives where the light bulb goes off and we realize if something is a calling, like this is a passion, this is truly who we are. What were you like as a medical student when
I
you
was
finally...
a little bit more mature. So in South Africa, you can go straight into medical school from high school. And it's the cream of the cream. These are really smart kids. And I'm 25 and they're 18.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was a little self-conscious and a little intimidated. I'd never really done zoology, biology. I was way in over my head. So I kept my head down. I went for lots of tutoring, extra lessons. But because I was asking people for help, I made a lot of friends. And in my second year, we're all equal. We're doing histology, anatomy, and no one's really done that before. And then in my third year, they voted me to be the class president. And that became, I thought, was a 1 year job turned into the whole of medical school. I was the class president. And so I was the one who organized the medical school ball, the debating thing. We had a debate with the University of Stellenbosch, um, social events, announcements. So I was very involved with my class, the yearbook, all those things. So at the end, I think I was incredibly lucky because I got to know the whole spectrum of the class, not just little cliques. I got to know everybody. So I was focused, dedicated, but I was always involved organizing things. And I think it helped me a lot after medicine to have that type of, I'm a connector, an organizer, and it gave me a little bit of confidence when I finished.
Do you feel that you've changed since then, or how did you grow within that period of time?
Um, that's a good question. Yes, I've changed, but no, I haven't. I still love to organize things, connect people, conversations, social connections. That's bubbly, exciting, comforting, enjoyable. I just love that type of interaction. Um, but the world of medicine doesn't give you as much time as when you were a medical student. So I think I've also become very conscientious with my work and to some degree a little imbalanced. It tends to consume you. And so I've put, I think, way too much time into my work. The organizing, socializing, other aspects sort of faded over time.
So it sounds like the thing that sustained you through what people describe as a really challenging period of time when you're in your studies, your medical studies, that tended to fade over time because of the demands of the
Yes.
work. So
Yes.
that would be an interesting thing for us to come back to. What were those initial early years like for you when you were in your residency?
They were difficult because I started in the South African system. So I did my internship in a public hospital in Natal. It's not called KwaZulu Natal, but back then it was Natal. And I had to rotate through obstetrics, gynecology, pediatrics, surgery, medicine. Is very challenging because you're given a lot of responsibility early. In South Africa, there's not this protective net of people watching you. So you're a little in over your head, but it was confidence building too. And then after my internship in South Africa, I was what they call a medical officer at the world's biggest trauma center in Baragwanath Hospital in Johannesburg. So I was a surgical medical officer, and that was unbelievable. It was like a war zone every night. So when I arrived in America to start all over again, I had to do internship, residency, all of that. I had a lot of confidence because I'd seen and done a lot. I couldn't get over how much paperwork there was at the beginning, writing notes and there was a great amount of education. But I was exhausted. In South Africa, when your work's done, you went home. In the American system, it seemed like you never were finished. You'd have morning report and then round on your patients and then clinic and then you'd be on call and then you'd be doing presentations. And it was just so much more intense. So I actually was exhausted by the end of my American internship. It was very different to what I was expecting.
Yeah. Compare for me that joyful young man who, was part of the social club and kind of created a community. And then that young man who then had to start over, as you said, within the U.S. system. What did you notice shifted for you in that period of time?
Yeah, I think I became very task goal orientated. The American system is very much like that. You know, you want to be a chief resident, and that gets you into fellowship. And in fellowship, you want to be good and publish papers. And so suddenly there's not a lot of time for the other aspects of your personality. Um, coupled with that, I just got married and had 3 little kids over the course of fellowship. So that was hard to balance the family life with all the demands of the workplace. You try your best, but I was physically exhausted. I'd come home spent. Um, I ended up getting pulmonary tuberculosis. I was so exhausted. Um, I picked it up obviously in South Africa with all the work. The United States, I got done. That was another challenge. But it's not all bad. You're feeling like you're growing, you're getting skills, you're becoming acknowledged, you're getting opportunities, you're feeling like you're rising within the system. So that at the time seemed very important.
I think it's also relevant to highlight that shift in how you approached the work and how you felt internally about it, and all the many ways, all the many roles you carried at that point in your career through your fellowship, where now you're a father and a husband, and that presents challenges where you have no opportunity to stop and be sick, right? Because you're training and there's an expectation. So I say this because I think people who are listening can really relate to this, what I'm understanding to be a shift in this effervescent part of your life to a more task focused, probably competitive a little bit too, right? Because there was expectations.
And I think I'm hard on myself. I would guess a lot of medical people are. We go up through a critical system, and sometimes life and death is on the line, and being responsible and trying to do better is part of the job. So I would do my best, but you'd always have this sense of doubt. And then there was another layer on this. When you come from another medical system, you sort of have to prove yourself that you're good enough, because they don't know about my training, they don't know about my medical school. So there's that sense of you're not really good enough. I am sure many people experience this. If they come outside the known bubble of what's known, you have to sort of try a little harder. And I think that was extra pressure on myself as well.
It sounds like this process of becoming and falling into your calling had its moments of challenge, but that you were also able to rationalize and understand that it's a period of time, and really make the best out of the experience. There's a certain resilience, it sounds like, you developed through the process. And before we go into the becoming part, I'm curious, is there a particular thing that really stands out for you from those early days, from your beginning?
It stands out in a positive or negative?
Positive or negative? Either one, you get to choose.
Yeah, there is. Getting into fellowship was a big deal. My visa was about to expire, and this mentor wrote a letter for me, and I got an interview, and I won a green card in the lottery. So these were like random events that I couldn't control that were happening to more or less tell me you can stay, you can study more. So that was a big positive. Um, you know, negatives really didn't have a chance to manifest till you're an attending and out on your own because you're still in this protective net of professors and everything. One of the big negatives, my first year out, I got mentioned in a lawsuit. Um, I was dropped eventually, but my gosh, I was so hard on myself. It was a young woman who came in with low blood pressure, high white count. She's critically ill. I worked all night to save her. She'd had open heart surgery a month or two before that, and she died. And I go out and tell her young husband, young kids that she died. She was 24 years of age, and uh, they had made a case that she died because she had blood around the heart, and she'd hemopericardium. I'd floated a swan. There wasn't equalization of the diastolic pressures. There was nothing for me to focus on something like that. Anyway, I got dragged through 2 years of having to go to depositions, and eventually they dropped me, but I was depressed for 2 years. That was, I think you beat yourself up, you second guess yourself, and it was terrible. I was so depressed. But you move on. But that certainly getting into fellowship was a high, and having a legal issue in your first year, literally, I was only out of practice 6 months when that happened. Sorry, out of fellowship.
Right, as a physician, you're exposed, and the goal for all of you is to help and to save and to give the best quality of life for folks that are living with illness. And then these tragic things happen, and there's really no rule book, right? There's no instruction book on how you navigate that. And it's tough. And especially, I have so much respect for you because especially it happening so early in your career, I can't imagine how difficult that might have been. And it's an interesting segue because, and I have to give you credit for this question because I know one of the conversations we've had over the course of time, you shared with me this experience, and I thought this is just a brilliant question to ask any physician. But do you remember your first patient and what that encounter taught you? What emotions were like for you in that first moment?
Then in my South African internship, I'll always remember being asked to see this lady. She was from a rural part of South Africa, and she had cervical cancer with pleural effusion, so probably metastatic cancer. And the hope and the respect she had in her eyes when I came up to her and explained I needed to get some fluid off and breathe better. I think she thought I was some sort of angel. And so I drained the fluid, and with an interpreter, she was Goza speaking. I explained everything. And she called in her family and kept telling the family and pointing that this was the guy who helped her and she could breathe better. I don't know. It made me feel really special and helpful. I'll never forget that. And actually, I'm only retired a week, but I'll always remember my last case. So I retired on the 29th of June, and I was hoping for a quiet day. And my shift ends at 7 p.m. At 5 p.m., I get this lady from an outside hospital who's in cardiogenic shock, intubated with all these arrhythmias. She's in liver failure with an INR of 13, creatinine's 5, potassium 6. She's basically trying to die. And I'm like, no, this is not my last case. But anyway, got her stabilized from a rhythm perspective. I had to put in an arterial line, which was very difficult in the sense that if she bled, it was a big problem. It went smoothly. I put in a dialysis catheter. It went so smoothly, not one drop of blood. Called the nephrologist. And by the time 7 o'clock came, she had a normal blood pressure, normal heart rhythm. And I sort of felt like I guess I still got it, you know. It was a nice way to end, but it was very stressful. Yeah. Nurses came up afterwards and said, "Oh man, that was so good. Thank you. You've helped this lady." And then the husband came in, and it was just a very nice closure to my medical career. Yeah.
It's the reward, right?
Yeah.
That because of
You
the work.
see, it can make you cynical, but moments like that carry you.
I have lots of questions for you about what this particular phase of your career has been like. And before we get there, though, there's this whole middle period. And it's interesting
Yeah.
because the more physicians I speak with, they tend to skip the middle, right? They talk a lot about the beginning and what those experiences were like, and they have it etched in their mind. And then we talk a lot about the phasing out and the endings, but it's that middle space that tends to be the messiest and most complicated, the ones that shape us, the ones that actually where the wounds develop and where there's healing. So I'm curious, you talked about your first patient as a med student, as an intern. You talked about your last patient.
Yes.
Congratulations, by the way.
Took me 40 years,
graduating
but I made
from this
it.
field. And
Yes.
we are going to talk about
Took me
that.
40 years, but I made it.
Well, and I think that you have a lot to offer folks who are coming into this phase of their career. So I'm anxious to kind of get there with you. But I wonder if you have a memory of that very first day that you were an attending physician. You are out on your own.
You've got it wrong. The buck stops with you. There's no safety net. You have to trust yourself a lot. You make mistakes. You have to be gentle with yourself. You feel almost like you shouldn't be asking for help, but you probably should. It's difficult. That transition it's not stressful in one day. It's stressful over many cases, over many, many weeks and months. But, you know, it's a rite of passage. You enjoy the feeling that the learner's sort of behind you. You're no longer a student. You're now the most experienced person in the room. It feels good, but yes, it's scary because of the sense of making a mistake.
Or what does it mean for a doctor to reach out and ask for
Well,
help?
to be honest, you feel like maybe you're incompetent. You feel like you don't have your act together. You feel like you should know this. You feel like you're not meant to be portraying some sort of vulnerability. So I think you tend to, at least I did, not put myself in that situation and feel like I can figure this out on my own. But now, with the wisdom of 30 years of clinical practice, I I think I would very differently going forward. It was stressful to feel like you had it all, you know. It's not so much intellectual knowledge. You can look it up to date and you can sort of quickly get up to speed on something. It's more the art of medicine, the judgment, the difficult families, the gray areas.
Would you say that in the last few years of your career, given the gained wisdom and experience, you felt differently about that? And also, as you're teaching learners, is that part of what you speak with them about or teach
Yes,
them
I
about?
do feel differently about it, and I have reached out to my colleagues more and more. I tell people when I'm teaching them that if you don't know, say so. There's a team here, and speak up. Um, if something doesn't make sense, question it. And because I started the bedside nursing assistant, I also have tremendous humility, and I'm very prone to asking the nurses as well. They know a lot more about their patients than you do. And so I talk to the nurses a lot and I learn a lot from them and they help me. So that evolved, I think, is a little gem that most doctors with time will come to figure out for themselves. Yeah.
Were there specific moments within that middle part of your career that you can recount that really shaped you or influenced you or made you look at life differently,
Yes.
made you look at the career differently?
So my first job was in Ohio in a small community hospital. My second job was in academics at Eastern Virginia Medical School. I was assistant professor and I do research and lectures, clinical care, and wasn't for me. Eventually, politics and slowness of the whole process was too much for my personality. So the third job ended up being a 20-year. That was the middle part of my career. And it was at Wyoming Medical Center in Casper, Wyoming. The job ad went something like, come to the Rockies, enjoy the great outdoors, and be your own boss. And I'm like, that's for me. So, I was a big fish in a small pond. Wyoming Medical Center was the biggest hospital in Wyoming, so it was big city medicine with a small town feel to it. So I started my own practice. So that was a new role as well. So first of all, I was a private practice, then I was an academic, and now it's all on me. I have to run the practice, I have to employ staff to do all the accounting, and I have to have a clinical service. And so I did that for 6 years, and the man I was on call with, he eventually teamed up with me and we joined our practices. But then he got to his mid 60s or late 60s and wanted to retire. That was a pivotal moment for me because back in those days we were doing sleep studies, pulmonary function tests, bronchoscopies in the hospital, running the ICU, traveling to satellite clinics, and having a private practice across the street. It was like 5 hats. And I was on call every second night. So sorry, every third night. One night him, one night back to me. When he decided to retire, I didn't know what to do. And so that's when I approached the hospital and I tried to convince them to start an intensivist program, people in house on shifts, and then you have someone else in the office so that you're not running around doing 10 different things. And this was a big deal, but they went for it. The board went for it. I was medical director for the first 6 years and it was the first intensivist program in Wyoming. And I felt a big responsibility for that because it was my baby, my idea. I did the elevator pitch and a lot more to get everyone to buy in. And, they had to employ 6 intensivists. It was a lot of detail. But it gave me a new way of life because now when I was off, I was truly off. But I think at that stage, I started to get, even with the intensive program, a little bit depressed with low energy. I just couldn't keep up the high performance energy. And it had an effect on my personal life. Became distant, disconnected from my wife, and we ended up going through a divorce. So that's my mid-career and not the way I planned my life. But you have to find meaning in these things, and so it brought me to a whole new thing. So I started reading a lot, going to courses, doing yoga, the Chopra Center for Perfect Health, becoming a yoga teacher, doing integrative medicine, opening a wellness center in the hospital, the first of its type, a wellness center within an acute care hospital. And it gave me a whole new lease in life. Not that I saw those dots and I could join them going forwards, but looking backwards, yes, I think that was tragic, and it was I was a victim of my own success. Maybe I was just exhausted, and so I don't know if it's every mid-career for every physician, but I've heard a variation of my story many times.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that and the vulnerability it takes to be able to reflect like that and share that. And I imagine, it's something I hear so frequently that the calling and the sacrifice, it's endless and something has to
Yeah.
give. And for so many, family life tends to take the back burner, not with intention, but because that's the role, that's the job. And I think if families are ill prepared for what it is to support a physician, it can make it so challenging. But what really stands out for me, Mark, and I knew this the first time we interacted on LinkedIn, the first time we spoke, is that you take every opportunity, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, and you find a way to learn from it and grow from it. And I think if there's one message that we can leave our listeners, our viewers or other physicians who are watching this, is that there's possibility, there's growth, even in heartache,
Yes,
and in loss, and in the sacrifice. Right?
For me anyway, you have to.
Yes,
You blossom from these events, and there's something there to learn about yourself, and that's, you can call it a pivot, you can call it whatever you want, but I've always felt like you should rise to what comes your way and try your best. And it's been a beautiful career. There has been a lot of frustration as the practice of medicine has changed, but the connection, the sense of humanity, the rewards, there's no career like it. You're never bored. You're always humble because you think you know it all. You'll quickly be brought down to size. So it's a constant growth medicine. You never really stop growing. I'm still reading up on my last day. I'm like checking out something, and it's a great career. But the way it's changed for me, I think it's hard to speak to the next generation, but I think I straddle two different styles of medicine. I started in the traditional classical style and gradually had to convert to the digital style. But vinyl's coming back in records, so it may swing the other way. But I wasn't a great fan of the digital, but I never give up my roots, and I think that's what makes it, for me, still a very rich practice.
Well, I'd love for you to keep going with this thought, because it's a beautiful segue to this idea of what's changed for you in terms of your relationship with medicine. And if you think about, we've talked about your early years, the messy middle, I call it, and now this sort of final chapter of your career. What has changed for you?
Oh God, everything's changed.
How has it evolved?
I'm now the unit secretary and the pharmacist and the data entry person. I spend, I don't know, 6 hours a day sitting on a chair doing data entry. I never foresaw that when I started medical school. And people write these 8-page notes, so a lot has changed. Most physicians, over 70%, are now corporate employees. That's a big change too. And with that comes the C-suite dictates that filter into the multiple hospitals, and things have to be done. And are, at least in the earlier part of my career, people used to want to know what I thought and would elicit my input. Now I'm just told what to do from a big head office. So these are big changes if you've known a different experience. I think what's a big challenge for the generation of doctors coming after me is maybe I'm just projecting my issues. Not being asked what to do and being told what to do after the fact is very frustrating, and the why is not explain. So I think what needs to be changed in the world, the practice of medicine, is to get back to a more transparent, collaborative way of communicating so that we get buy-in from the docs. Otherwise, people do this soft quitting where they no longer they don't volunteer for leadership positions, they do nothing, they punch the card, go home, and live their separate life as if it's sort of a bubble doesn't communicate with the other bubble called work. And that's one way of doing it, but it makes for a very shallow work experience when it's like that. Having known the other thing where you're involved, connected, your opinion matters, you're really making changes that everyone's behind. So that's a little bit of a segue, but this new environment or culture or practice of medicine for someone who's maybe no different, maybe that's okay. But most doctors are critical thinkers. They're intelligent. They're problem solvers. And to just tell them what to do and stay in their lane, I think psychologically that would never have traction. It's not going to work in the long term.
Yeah. I think you're also, if we dig a little bit deeper, you're also talking about the thing that draws
Correct.
people to the.
No one's drawn to the profession because of relative value units and or bonus points for this, or how many charts you signed, or no one is drawn to the profession because of that. You're drawn to the profession because of your ability to problem solve, to help, to connect with human beings, to be challenged, to be respected. All those things are part of the magnet of medicine. They need to be preserved in the work. Yes, yes. If the soul is put under blankets and can't shine, it takes so much away from the job. Yeah. So, I think everyone will have to find their way through this evolve, and it's changing. It keeps changing. Like they keep changing the computers, they keep changing so many things. It's never the same. But you have to find a way to be respected and have meaning in the work you do and find your soul and your spirit within the work. I don't think anyone went into medicine to punch a time card. Visit the patient for a brief 5 minutes and move on. I work in a 32-bed ICU, and it's disciplinary, it's trauma and neurosurgery, open heart, medicine, neurology, it's everything. But I would argue that would be so unsatisfying for me. So I do like going in, speaking with the nurse if there's no one around, getting on the phone, speaking with the family members. If the family members there, sitting down and talking with them, trying to find out what was this person like, because I can't speak to them. They've got a tracheal tube or whatever. Those connections, they help you in so many ways. If you're ever going to have a bad outcome and there's a target on your back because you have malpractice insurance, a good relationship with family is your best security. It's the best thing you can do. But it's good medicine because you learn about your patient. And who doesn't want to have an enjoyable interaction? It's so important to connect with the team, the nurses, the families, and everybody else. So yes, the technology could put you in a very dark place. I think you'd be poorly served if you kept taking the technological shortcuts because you're missing the humanity of the whole work.
So you preserved, not everybody does or can, but you've preserved that sense of humanity, purpose, passion, mission, soul by ensuring that you're still interacting with your patients. It's seamless to the patients. It's almost invisible to them, right?
Yeah, we all struggle. I don't know anyone who has a perfect job, but you only need a couple of little positives to make your day, and they don't need to be big wins. They don't. So I think you have to look for the little things, the smile, the eye contact, the odd compliment. And what I noticed actually is now that I'm retired, there's all these people on Facebook and other platforms saying all these very nice things about me, which is very nice. But what I've come to appreciate is you shouldn't wait till someone's dead or retired to say nice things about them. And you'll get a lot more out of it if you compliment your team, your workforce, and say, I love the way you do that. And I noticed myself doing that in my last week of work. I'm like, I'm not going to get a chance again. And I was, I don't know, really dishing it out to everybody, complimenting and everything. And it's a bit like that paradox. I think the more you give, you get a lot out of giving. And the more you compliment, it sort of helps you too. So another hack, if you will, but it's not to be insincere. I really believe that.
I think in the short time we've been talking, you've demonstrated for everyone, and there are many who are going through the same thing. I'm sure this will resonate for so many, that there's been such shifts in the practice of medicine and in the experience that you have as medical students, interns, residents, fellowship. As you progress in your career trajectory, the field of medicine changes to still cultivate humanity, joy, purpose, meaning, and it's real inspiring. Speaking of offering a compliment, I just have been in awe of you. I also just want to give a plug for all the beautiful writing that you're doing on LinkedIn. I hope people find you on LinkedIn and read, because there's so much to learn from you, Mark. So I really appreciate that. And
Struggling because I've been burned out. I've lost track of how many times I've been burned out. I have never seriously thought about suicide, but I've thought about leaving the profession many, many times. So I want to give back something to people who struggle, because I know what it's like.
Well, we've hinted at this, and there's been several teasers throughout this whole conversation, but maybe we can now talk about this final chapter of this part of your career, because I think the journey continues, right? But what initially made you think about stepping away, stepping back, retiring, your renaissance, as I know you call it? When did those thoughts begin? What was that period of time like? How did you prepare? What advice would you have for others who are in that contemplative or
Difficult but
pre-contemplative
easy
phase?
at the same time. Look, I think everyone's big decisions in life, like marriage and retirement and jobs, are different for everybody. I think I've heard someone say, you'll know when the time is right. And it didn't happen in a day or two. As I was on this very nice schedule, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, I gradually, about 6 years ago, decided to go to halftime, which really meant I only had to work 12 weeks a year. Each week was 84 hours. But, I had to do 12 of those a year. And so I got to experiment with what it's like to have 3 months off. You could organize it that way. You could do 3 months off and then do 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and then have another 3 months off. So I really played around with that, and I began to notice that I was never bored. I was never wondering, "Oh, what are they all doing at work? I wish I was there now." That didn't happen. So I began to realize I'll be fine if I did stop working. But there was still I help people, I'm good at what I do, there's an income check every month. It's just hard to close the door on all that. But two things happened. Last year, coming back from visiting family in South Africa, there's a KLM flight to Amsterdam, and the captain came on and he gave the most beautiful overhead announcement to one of his senior flight attendants. Honestly, it brought tears to my eyes. How thoughtful and sincere, and such a complimentary 3-minute talk about this lady. And this was her last flight. She was going to retire after 40 years. And there was something about that, because I started med school in 85, so it's 40 years for me. And I'm like, huh. So as I'm walking out of the plane, she's standing there and everyone's clapping. And I shook her hand and I just looked at her, maybe for just some, I don't know, guidance or like, are you sure about this? And the way she beamed and smiled, I'm like, okay, I think I'm getting close, because I was just very envious of the way she was ending her career and how the send off was, and she'd done a good job. And so that was part of it. And then, unfortunately, a few months later, I heard that a very close friend, cousin of mine, my first cousin, was dying of brain cancer. He just retired. He was sort of my hero in boarding school. He was the great rugby player, um, and just a funny, likable guy, big teddy bear, and just the funniest guy and great company. And young kids, much the same age as mine. And he went for radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and he had surgery. And unfortunately, it was glioblastoma for me, and he died in his 65th year. So they asked me to speak at the celebration of life. So I flew back to Ireland. He was in a beautiful little coastal village called Dunfanaghy, and his kids were there, all my aunts and cousins and everybody. And so it was a great Irish celebration of life. There was poetry, there was dancing, there was music, there was singing, there was great speeches. And, I gave my few words about Dermot. Um, but I really battled with the idea that he's close to me in age. And just as he's heading into retirement, the lights go out. And so on the way home on the plane, I more or less made my mind up. I'm young. I feel young. I'm healthy. I'm fit. I want to enjoy this next, whatever it is, 10, 20 years, whatever. I want to be doing all these other things I've put on hold. And I don't want something like that to happen to me. Although there's no guarantees. You could die tomorrow crossing the street. But in medicine, we see this all the time. People postpone, 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 postpone. Not just doctors, but the patients we look after. And then just as they get into this golden years, something, their health gives out, finances, something drastic happens. So these were the little things that nudged me on. But that was a accumulation of 6, 8 months that made me make the decision and write the letter. And I've no regrets. And I feel like I went out on my terms. I wasn't marched out of the hospital by the security guards. Yeah, that's a win. It's always bad when that happens. It's not how you want to end your career. But so it was a beautiful send off. It wasn't, it was very different to what the flight attendant got, but in my way, it was even more beautiful, and I've no regrets. But I spent 6 years playing with retirement in terms of free time, and then some personal things happen or experiences that make it clear that it's a good time.
And I think, one of the biggest takeaways for me since we've spoken and now in having this conversation with you is the importance of trying to prepare both mentally and logistically what that time will look like. I mean, I think there's a push for all of us at some point. There's something that will get us to that moment where we start to think about it.
And the one hero that I've always looked up to was Bjorn Borg. He's a beautiful looking model, like this Viking-like Swedish tennis star, and I just thought he was the coolest guy. And he retired from tennis at age 27 or 28. He went out on top, and I always felt like, I want to do that. I want to stop at the top of my game. And I'm not sure if I did it right, but I always felt like he never went back. Like the boxers, they want to come back and be the champion again, or the actors who keep coming back yet they sort of past their prime or whatever. I always felt like to know when to stop is a very special gift, and you don't want to become, I suppose, cognitively where you just don't have it anymore, or maybe you're, I don't know, you're so burnt out and cynical, you're disruptive to other people. You know, there's all sorts of things that can happen if you stay there too long.
What's been the most surprising? I mean, I know it's only
You
been a
know,
week, so
it
we'll give you a
hasn't
little grace.
sunk in
But what's been the
really.
most surprising for you?
Nothing's changed, but everything's changed. It's like I am done, but I haven't really felt it yet. Um, but it's the gift of choice and time now. I'm very interested in many things, and to be able to dive deep into something, you know, and learn, and maybe teach or write more or do something spontaneous. You know, it's just a freedom. Yeah, it'll take time. I I sense that everything's changed, but I still have this part of me where I think a friend of mine said to me he had post traumatic stress disorder for the first year after retirement. He didn't know it, but you're jittery, you're easily startled, your sleep's not quite right. It takes a while for your nervous system to. The type of work we do is not normal work. The beeper, you know, constantly being ready to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. Decades of that. It's going to take time, but I'm looking forward to getting into swimming. I'm looking forward to new friendships, new interests. So the anticipation and the freedom, I think that would be the big things. More missing birthdays, yeah, those type of things. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Um, yeah, it's like I think life can be divided into thirds. That's the way I look at it. There's like first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, like before you're born, and I'm in the third trimester of after you're born. You know, and it's potentially the best because I'm smart, I'm wise, I'm healthy, I got more resources to enjoy things than when I was 30. So it has all the ingredients to be a beautiful recipe or creation or something. You know, it's hard when you're building your career and you're in build mode and you're that middle part of your career. You don't have a lot of downtime, and now you've got all these insights, wisdom, experiences to draw. And so, yeah, I actually think it it doesn't have to be the frail, debilitated sort of slow march to the grave years. I don't believe that. I don't want to live like that. And so I, and it's talked about a lot now, this health span versus lifespan. I don't really need to hit the 100 years to know it was a good life. I just want to still be playing tennis or swimming when I have whatever I have, a heart attack or something happens. I want to be active. I want to be energetic and enjoying life. And I think if you stay in medicine too long, I've seen this, whew, you become so old and withered and exhausted looking because it burns you out. It's a tough career. And I see guys who are, I don't know, still doing it in their 70s. And I'm like, that's their choice. But for me, that makes no sense. Where's the last third? You know, where's the where's the fun in that middle section? But is it just to have worked hard? No, for me, it's important to have grown to. It's like this is all prep school. life is prep school, and now you're ready to enjoy the main event. Yeah. Enjoy the main event.
This is unscripted, folks. This is wisdom right there for you to consume.
Yeah. Being well trained, and you will have to enjoy the high and know how to navigate the lows. Don't be a fortress. If someone's struggling, reach out, and you'll help yourself by helping others. And surround yourself with people who seem to have figured it out. You know, gravitate to those who seem to do good medicine and yet have their act together as a human being. Well, I'd just like to take this moment to thank you for the work you're doing, because we connected through LinkedIn, but there was no one like Lisa Catalano around when I was going through burnout and struggle. And most physicians want to go to the prescribed mental health resources that healthcare corporations say you should go to, or they get little benefit from logging into the wellness app. So you are doing great work, and I think you come from a very sincere, wise space, and so people hopefully will understand that you're one in a million. There's not a lot of people doing what you're doing. It's so needed. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And
we don't get this platform very often, and yeah, I'm very grateful that somehow you have connected with me and given me this platform.
Mark, I'm so grateful for you to take the time and the care to share this story. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, those who are watching and listening can see themselves inside of this story. And if something resonated for you, if you're feeling the nudge of your own crossroads, I hope that Mark's story makes you feel less alone and more seen. Healing isn't something that we just offer to others. It's something we learn to reclaim for ourselves. This is Unscripted, where truth finds its voice and physicians find their way back home, back to themselves. See you next time.